Hi, hi, shalom friends. Let me share with you a typical Shabbos scene in a synagogue. It's a bar mitzvah. The rabbi comes a little bit earlier to welcome the guests and to find out who's mishpacha, who's the family, who's the grandfather, and which is the cousin. And while he's doing that and welcoming the guests, he's also thinking, who will he give the honor to be called up to the Torah? And he sees a stranger, and he goes over to him, Shalom Aleichem, welcome to the shul. Are you a relative? And the guy says, no, I'm actually a friend of a friend. So the rabbi says, oh, it's so nice that you're here. Is there any way I could be of assistance? He says, yeah, I would like an aliyah. I would like to be called up to the Torah. So the rabbi says, ordinarily we offer that honor to the guests, but there are a lot of mishpacha, there's a lot of family that's over here. They're all celebrating the bar mitzvah, and the custom is actually to give it to them. He said, well, I still would like to be called up. So the rabbi sees him and doesn't want to hurt him. He says, you know what, I'll see. Maybe towards the end, maybe we'll add, because occasionally you could add more than some. He says, no, I want to be called up first. So the rabbi looks at him. He seems to be okay in terms of personality. He says, why are you so insistent on being called up first? So with a broad smile, it says, because I'm a Kohen. I'm a priest. And the law is that the Kohen gets called up first. Of course, when he says that, the rabbi responds equally with a smile. He says, of course. I didn't know you're a Kohen. If you're a Kohen, by all means, you will get the first aliyah, the first honor. Typical, right? Well, I was thinking to myself, hearing the radio so much about white privilege, I was wondering, is there something like that in Judaism? Is there a resentment towards people that are born privileged? For example, there could be family members, there could be visiting dignitaries, and yet the first one that gets the honor of being called up to the Torah is a Kohen, but what did he do to deserve it? He's privileged, and what about all the other people that are worthy? And yet, to the best of my knowledge, I've never heard a disagreement or an argument or any resentment, even in the slightest, about a person who was born to be an Israelite, which means he could never officiate in the Holy Temple, and he's upset that he was not born of the priestly caste, which actually serves in the temple in the Bet HaMikdash. So why is that? Why is it that we don't have that resentment, so to speak? There's another thing. Let's make believe that I'm that rabbi, and I greet and someone says, hi, what's your name? Where do you live? My name is, I'm making this up. My name is Herschel Soloveitchik. I say, Soloveitchik? That's a famous rabbinic name. Are you related to the famous Soloveitchik family? He said, am I related? My great-grandfather was Reb Chaim Brisker. He was the first of the greats. And I say, oh, wow, we got a special person in the synagogue. And by the Kiddush, I make a special announcement. We want to welcome the great-grandson of this great rabbi. And now stop for a second. Everyone, of course, applauds and says l'chaim, and it's a great honor. But think, why am I showing him any honor? What makes him special? Because his great-grandfather was a great rabbi? That's privilege. He was born into privilege. Why do we respect that? And I realized that the reason why a Jewish nation never resented privilege is because we don't see privilege as privilege. We see privilege as responsibility. When someone is born into the tribe of Levi and he becomes a priest, when the temple will be rebuilt, he will officiate in the Holy Temple. And if I will be privileged to bring an offering and a gift to God, I will not be able to do what he will do on my behalf. I will ask him, can he please do this and this for me? And of course, he will say, of course I will. Because being born into greatness means you're obligated to act great. In our tradition, usually when we tell a story, it's like something to the effect like there was once a great rabbi who was very poor. And then it continues. But actually, we have a fair amount of great Torah scholars who are not very poor, who actually were very successful business people. And when we study their books, and when someone asks, who was this gentleman or who was this rabbi, the response is, well, he was a great, great Torah scholar. He also had a flourishing business. He was a very wealthy man, gave a lot of charity, but his true greatness was in Torah. So we don't minimize his affluence, but that's not what makes him great. If he's a great Torah scholar, his responsibility to the Jewish people was Torah scholarship. The fact that he gave a lot of charity is secondary to the idea that he was born to be a teacher of Torah. And if I told you, for example, that the first Rothschild of the famous Rothschild banking family was actually not only an observant Jew, but a very knowledgeable Jew, we wouldn't say that his greatness was that he gave a share, I don't know if he did, but that he was able to give a class of Chumash and Rashi. We'll say his greatness was that as rich as he was, he never lost touch with the ordinary Jew. He was very, very dedicated to helping his brothers and sisters, to uplift them from poverty and to save them from trouble. But one second, he was also a bit of a scholar. Yeah, but that wasn't what he was created to do, to be a scholar. He was created to offer his gifts in what he did best, which was, in this case, finance. In fact, there's a very charming story from, I mentioned Reb Chaim of Brisk. And on Yom Kippur, the evening service, after the Kol Nidre, it's not very long. So let's make believe that if the service starts at 7 o'clock, usually by 9 you finish for sure. And then what happens from 9 o'clock until the following morning at 8:30 or 9:30? So basically, a lot of people would stay in the synagogue and say the book of Psalms. Some of them would spend the entire night in the synagogue saying Psalms. Most of them were poor. They really didn't have a beautiful home to go to. So they would just sleep in the shul. And of course, in the city of Brisk, there was also a fair amount of philanthropists. And every Yom Kippur, there would be an appeal. One day, one Yom Kippur night, after Kol Nidre, half hour after the service, Reb Chaim is walking through the synagogue, and he sees a philanthropist saying Tehillim very piously, saying the book of Psalms. So he says, Shmero, what are you doing here? Go home to sleep. He said, Rebbe, it's Yom Kippur. I want to say Tehillim. So Reb Chaim tells him, your job is not to say Tehillim. Tomorrow I'm going to make an appeal. I need you to be in a good mood. I need you to be healthy. If you're going to go to sleep very late and you're fasting, tomorrow you're going to be grumpy. And when I make an appeal, your heart won't be there. But why, he says, why should I not be like everyone else? He says, in the military, if a person is on the cavalry, he's not allowed to decide that he wants to be infantry. And if you're infantry, you can't decide that you want to become in the Navy. Every person in the military has a job. God gave this gentleman the ability to say Psalms, Yom Kippur by night. When he's doing his job, he's bringing blessing to all of us. God gave you a lot of money. Your job is to be agreeable, to share it with others. So I need you to go home, have a good night's sleep, come back tomorrow, you'll be sit up front, you'll get the honor of a rich person, and indeed, you'll actually open up your heart properly. You see, being privileged, whether you're privileged to be poor or rich, or privilege to be a scholar or simple person in Torah knowledge, whatever privilege you're born into, and that you've made something of it, now your responsibility is to celebrate it. And I'll end off with another charming story. One of the true great Hasidic leaders in Galicia was Reb Naftali of Ropshitz. He was wise, he was pious, he was witty, actually was known for his sense of humor, he was scholarly, he had everything that a Rebbe needs and more. He was also born into greatness because his father and grandfather, like going back 10 generations, they were all incredibly spiritual and holy people. Many times when he would talk to the Hasidim, he would mention that I come from such great lineage. One day a Chassid asked him, Rebbe, we know you're very special and very unique in your own holiness, and yet you keep talking about your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. I mean, it almost sounds as if there's a sense of arrogance over here. So Rabbi Naftali said, no, you don't understand at all. When I talk about my parents and grandparents, I think to myself, everyone thinks that I am scholarly and holy. But then when I think about where I come from, and I realize their greatness, I push myself for more. So from your perspective, I'm already on top of the mountain. But I know people that were much greater than me, and they were in my own family. That means I have it in my genes. That means I could still grow. So here's a person who was, in italics, privileged, born into a rabbinic, saintly family. And what did he use that privilege for? For an impetus to grow greater. It's almost the greatness that he inherited caused him to be more humble. And that's how we're going to end off with this thought. The French have an expression, nobility obligates. It's not a gift. I would have been happy not to have been nobility, but if you're noble, it obligates you to act noble. Each and every one of us was born with a set of talents. Only we have those talents. No one else has it. And our job is not to resent or to feel inadequate or to feel guilty. Why do I have these talents? You have these talents because you are able to share those talents in a way that no one else can. So yes, there are differences between one tribe and another, and there are differences between intelligence between one and another, and there are differences in heart, in motion. But what we all should never forget is we are uniquely qualified the way we are to add a unique and special blessing that no one else can do. So let's hope and pray that the Mashiach comes, the righteous Redeemer, because collectively speaking, we have so much goodness and so much potential as the Jewish people to share with the entire world. We'll do it best when the righteous Mashiach leads us back to the Holy Land, and from there, Torah will flow forth and the Word of God. Shalom.